Chapter 43. The morning spoke of promise. The morning when her father would meet both Sevrin and Tesco. Desmond inhaled the fresh autumn air as she rode Chestnut across the field toward the hilltop Tesco had chosen for their meeting. Riding with her was Maria, as well as an entourage of knights chosen to escort her. The trees in the field had started to change their color, and birds twittered in anticipation of picking off the remains of harvest before heading south for the winter. Desmond had announced a holiday on the day of procession so as not to cost her subjects another day of work. Instead of presenting their gifts to the royal family, Desmond would present the dragon to them. Banners fluttered from her top poles on the hilltop Tesco had chosen. He, Sevrin, and Severin's friends from the city had worked to erect barriers around the central space. Behind the barriers, where spectators could sit and watch Tesco greet King James, were rows upon rows of wooden benches. In the middle of the space, a podium had been set up for the king, queen, Desimone, and the royal court to stand on. Colorful flags flapped from every surface. Several people, smoked meat dealers, the baker boys, anyone who would normally sell food to people waiting to present their procession gifts, had come out early. They were stationed in the spectators area, ready to sell to the audience. "This looks perfect." Desmond gazed at it all while Chestnut rode up the slope, and more of it came into view. "I had to admit, they did a wonderful job." Maria rode next to Desimone. "Probably better than a member of court could have done." "There's Sevrin now." Desimone pointed at him. He was surrounded by Henry, William, and Bradley. They clustered around Sevrin on the hilltop, stooping over something in Severin's hands. "I'll make sure everything's ready then." Maria rode her horse off to a small pavilion Desimone had set up at the base of the hill. "Sevrin!" Desimone waved to him as she rode up the hill to join them. He hid whatever he had been showing his friends behind his back. "Good morning, Your Highness." "Good morning, Sevrin." Desimone dismounted her horse. One of the servants took the reins and walked Chestnuts over to the place designated to tie up the horses. "Everything looks beautiful. Well done, all." It was a big collaboration. Sevrin slipped the thing into his pocket. Everyone pitched in. "Even the dragon," Bradley said. "I have never met a fussier creature." William crossed his arms. "Do you know how many samples I had to bring to him before he would buy anything?" Tesco is excited about all this. Sevrin motioned to the spectacle around him. He wanted everything to be perfect. "Where is Tesco, anyway?" Desmond scanned the sky. "I don't see him." "Out of sight." Sevrin let his eyes wander the mountains. "He says he wants to make a grand entrance." "The dragon has a flair for the dramatic, Your Highness," Henry said. "I can't wait for father to meet him." Desmond took one of Severin's hands. "And to meet you." Sevrin smiled at her. "But you can't meet him dressed thusly." Desmond held his hands firmly. "You are to be my husband, and you must start to look the part. Maria?" "Yes, my lady." Maria appeared beside her. "Everything is ready. Maria will take you to where you can change. We picked out just the right outfit for you. Come on, then." Maria caught Severin's free hand and dragged him off. "One moment, Maria." Sevrin stumbled after her. "I get my feet under me." "Look at him, already henpecked," Bradley said, watching him go. The young men snickered to each other until Desmond glared at them. "He wants to present a good impression to my father." Desmond thrust her nose into the air. "Wait until you get engaged. I expect you'll change your tune then." In a few moments Sevrin returned dressed in a tunic of silvery green and grayish-green pantaloons. His feathered cap fluttered in the autumn breeze. Desmond's breath caught as he watched him approach. Finally, he looked as noble on the outside as he was on the inside. "I feel ridiculous." Sevrin adjusted his hat while eyeing his friends. None of them said anything, though they bit back smiles. "Suits you, Sevrin." Desmond bit her lips. "You look so handsome." She cleared her throat as her cheeks heated. Sevrin blinked. "Handsome?" Desmond nodded. "I expect I'm having a similar experience to what you did when I borrowed your mother's dress. Your farm clothes don't befit you. Perhaps I could get used to this then." Sevrin adjusted the tunic. With a smile, Desmond took his hand. A trumpet blast sounded through the air, followed by a song played by a band of minstrels. Trailing behind them rode a herald bearing a bannered trumpet. He was followed by several men on foot, each one carrying a banner displaying the seal of every noble house in Lauphah. The king and queen came next, riding richly decorated horses and dressed in their best clothes. Colored fabric fluttered in the air, while their jewels flashed in the morning lights. The royal court rode after them, each one trying to outdo the other in terms of finery and luxury. After them came the knights bearing their polished silver shields with their crests emblazoned on them. The entire population of Lauphah came next, everyone from merchant to peasant. Father's here. Everyone to your places. Desmond led Sevrin down to the podium. Severin's friends took their stands at various areas around the spectator's station, ready to direct the people where they ought to go. The minstrels were first to arrive, and took their places around the spectator area to play music for everyone while they waited for the festivities to start. After them, the banner bearers and herald made their way to the podium and took their places at the base of it. The king and queen dismounted their horses and climbed the stairs to join Desimone. The noblemen and women followed suit and took their places on the podium. Desimone. James took his daughter's hands. What a scene you've prepared for us. Indeed, Isabel joined him at his side. You've gone all out. Not me, mother, father. Desmond turned to Sevrin. This is Sevrin. He and his friends did all this. Ah, Sevrin. James released Desimone's hands to turn to him. The young man who'd befriended the dragon. I've heard so much about you. It's a pleasure to greet you, your majesty. Sevrin bowed. A rather clumsy one, Desimone noted. I should like to speak with you in depth when this is over. James heaved a sigh. So much has happened in my absence, and now I hear Sir Galloway has gone missing. I'm not clear on what has transpired. If it helps, sire, I can tell you my story where everyone gets settled. Much of what's happened is my fault after all. You didn't do anything wrong, Sevrin, Desimone said. Be that as it may, I should like to hear his tale. James motioned to Sevrin. Please. So Sevrin told the king his entire story from beginning to end. Desimone listened in closely. She had not yet heard it from Severin's point of view. He left nothing out, taking pains to give every detail he could remember, even as his face flushed in embarrassment during parts of the story. His honesty and frankness touched her in a way she had never felt before. If she loved him before, she adored him by the time he had finished. I see, James nodded as he considered the tale. Sevrin, thank you. I can tell you have been as truthful as you can. You are a man of compassion and integrity. Sevrin smiled. I learned from my father. I should like to meet him, but first, James turned to the crowd surrounding him. It seems it is time for the festivities to begin. With your leave, your majesty? Sevrin bowed with a flourish. A rather awkward bow. You have it, James said. Sevrin took a deep breath and let it out in a whistle that pierced the ear and silenced the crowd. In the silence to follow, a roar rolled across the hills. A column of fire rose into the air, and through it soared Tesco, olive scales glistening in the sun. He did a loop over the head of the spectators, who cheered with delight. With a smile in front of the honored guests on the podium, he alighted in the area set aside for him. Your Majesty! Tesco spread his wings as he bowed. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. James gaped at the dragon before gathering his courage. The pleasure is all mine. Father, Desimone motioned to Tesco. Allow me to introduce you to Tescophanes, a most worthy dragon. Oh, stop it, Princess. Tesco waved his paw. You're embarrassing me. I couldn't always be counted as a worthy dragon. He turned to James. I've come here today to extend my heartfelt apologies to you and your kingdom for my misguided attacks on your lands, your majesty. As a token of my sincerest repentance, as I promised to the lovely Princess Desimone, I offered this. Waving his hands, he stepped aside, moving his wing out of the way. Where there was nothing before, now stood several chests of gold and sacks of grain. The noblemen, women, and all spectators gasped in surprise. But Desimone caught sight of Henry and Bradley rushing back to hide out of sight. I hope, your majesty, this will be enough to rebuild your city. Tesco undid the catch for one of the chests. Gold gleamed in the morning sun. I have also tons of grain to replace what I burned when I first charged through your kingdom. Please accept my sincerest apologies. He bowed again. It will be done. James raised a hand in the air. These are kingly gifts, Master Tescophanes. Call me Tesco, the dragon said. With your leave, King of Lauphah, I wish to set my nets to the heights of the mountains. However, I do not wish to pose a threat to your people. To that end, I wish to reaffirm my vow of fealty to one of yours, Sevrin, a most worthy human. Time and time again he has come to my aid. He turned to Sevrin. I can never thank you enough. Think nothing of it, Sevrin said. You have my leave, James nodded. Please. Sevrin, my friend. Tesco leaned his head close to Sevrin. In view of heaven above and earth below, I declare my fealty to you. Should you call for me, I will answer. Should you need my defense, I will fight for you. Should you fall, I will avenge you. My friendship is yours forever. Sevrin laid a hand on Tesco's muzzle. With God as my witness, Tesco, I will stand by your side. I will defend you to the best of my ability. If you fall, I will avenge you. I will always be your friend." Tesco closed his eyes. This is a sacred vow, one as strong as dragon scales, which cannot be easily broken. Severn nodded. "Your Majesty." Tesco opened his eyes to look at James. "To you I say, as long as Severn remains in this city, and as long as Severn asks it from me, I will defend Lauphah from our enemies." "I thank you, Tesco," James said. "That said, I hope Severn plans to stay for a long time yet." Severn gave another awkward bow. "Your Majesty, With your leave, Your Majesty." Lord Donsforth, the spokesman of the royal court, stepped forward. "The court has something to say to Lord Severn." After glancing at Desimone, James nodded. "Very well. Speak." Lord Dusford cleared his throat. "My Lord Severn, we of the court, along with the knights of Lauphah, have decided to pledge our loyalty to you so long as you remain true to our city and our king. As a token of our pledge, we present you with the following gifts: 10 chests of gold and jewels, the land stretching from the eastern end of the city wall to the Addison Lake, the manor situated on said land, and we bestow upon you the title of Lord Appleton." Desmond leaned into Severn's ear. "That was my idea." Severn smiled at her. "It is our hope, my lord," Lord Dusford stepped closer to Severn, "that you will be enticed to remain in our city, and that you may be persuaded to take the hand of our princess as our own." Severn's bewildered face transformed into a steely glare. "What? Beg your pardon?" Desmond thrust her hands on her hips. "Did not discuss this." Tesco hissed in a breath through his teeth. "I know where this is going." "Now look here, you—" Desmond halted when James laid a heavy hand on her shoulder. "My esteemed ladies and gentlemen, you know very well I gave Desimone the choice of who her husband should be." James looked at them as if he were rebuking naughty children. "To try and go behind her back like this is beneath you. You bring shame on all your households this day." Lord Dusford ducked his head. "We only thought, my lord, that Lord Appleton would be more incentivized to stay should he have our lovely princess's hand." "What makes you think I wasn't planning on staying anyway?" Severn crossed his arms. "My home is here. My family is here." He glanced at Desimone. "My love is here." "Besides, I've already chosen my husband," Desmond said. Desmond took Severn's arm. "But not because you willed it," she spat at Dusford. "He is your choice?" Isabel looked over Severn for a moment. "You're certain, then?" "Yes." Desmond rested her head on his shoulder. "I have been my whole life." "Your whole life?" James eyed her. "What do you mean?" "Do you remember, father, when I was little and a boy broke into your orchard?" "Sir Apple, of course!" James smacked his forehead. "How could I be so dense? We've gone from trespass to thievery now." Severn blinked. "Thievery, sire?" "You've gone and stolen my daughter's heart." James smiled at him. "Do you know the penalty for such a crime?" Severn shook his head. "A lifetime of restitution." James winked at Desimone. "You must repay my daughter for such a grievous crime against her person." "That's fair, sire." Severn slipped a hand around her waist. "Although I don't think a lifetime is long enough." He kissed her hand. "Oh, Severn." Desmond wrapped her arms around him and laid her head on his shoulder. "Your Majesty, I had no idea you could wax so eloquent." When Desmond looked up, she found Mariella at the base of the podium holding a bouquet of flowers. Isabel stepped forward. "And you are?" "Mariella. I am Lord Appleton's mother." Mariella motioned behind her. Timron, leading an old cart horse carrying a sack of grain, approached next. "This is his father, Timron." "A pleasure to meet the one who raised such a fine child." James opened his arms to Timron. Timron grunted, narrowing his eyes. "Timron," Mariella elbowed him. "Isn't it time to let it go?" Timron turned his nose up and said nothing until his eyes fell on Desimone. She smiled at him. With a smile, he turned to James. "The pleasure is mine, Your Majesty. We have come to present our procession gifts to you, as is our custom." "We all have." Mariella turned behind her. The entire population of Lauphah had joined the line, carrying various goods. "I gave a proclamation, though." Desimone picked her head up from Severn's shoulder. "You don't have to give gift this year." "It's our honor and pleasure, Your Highness." Mariella gave a curtsy. "We do it for you, Princess." Timon bowed to her. The entire audience cheered in assent. "I told you." Severn gave her waist a squeeze. "The people of the city love you." Desmond gazed at her beloved people all lined up to present their gifts to her. Tears stung her eyes. "In that case," she said, wiping her cheeks, "I'm happy to receive them."